We are meeting here today to talk about the issue of mass immigration. And I like to be very precise in my words. I like to think that I'm careful in my language. I like to think that I use the phraseology that will not be misinterpreted. But I want everyone in this room to fix firmly in their minds this before they go anywhere forward. That there is no possibility, no chance whatsoever of addressing the issue of mass immigration honestly or in any real fashion without inevitably being referred to as a racist, a xenophobe, a bigot, a hater, a Nazi, a fascist, and literally Hitler. I want everybody to fix that firmly in their minds, because there's a school of thought out there, if you're really careful and you're very precise in your words, that won't happen. They won't make that accusation. That if you're careful enough, and that if you don't even harbour those ideas in the back furthest part of your mind, that somehow you won't get accused of it. And that anybody who has been accused of it must have at least made a mistake somewhere at some time. For example, in my own case, if only I hadn't gone to Germany that time. Seriously? Seriously, do you think the basis upon which I am referred to as a racist, xenophobe, Nazi, etc., is that I attended a meeting in Germany 20 years ago? Most of those who make reference to it nowadays don't like to even talk about when it was, because it's a little bit implausible 20 years on. I seem to have done very little for the National Socialist cause in the meantime, if I were so very committed there back in the year 2000. And they conclude from that, as I said, the school of thought, that is, we need somebody who's never made a mistake. Now, I've said this before, and I've said it again, is you show me a man who's never made a mistake, and I'll show you a man who's never made anything. And I made a throwaway remark at one particular speech very early on, which gets picked up on every now and again in social media, relating to the leadership of the party, the leadership of the National Party in particular, and my desire that somebody else should lead. This was picked up as, he's about to leave any moment. Now, I call that abandoning your post. I don't call it making way for somebody who is better to do the job. The price of leadership was what I was talking about, and I'd prefer not to pay it. Because at the very least, the price of leadership of this political party is dog's abuse. And the price of leadership is heavier than the price of membership. And the price of membership is heavier than the price of support. And the price of support is heavier than the price of voting for the National Party. But the price of doing nothing is Ireland. And so these usually keyboard warriors, occasionally not, occasionally in the media, but usually keyboard warriors, the premise that they begin with is that leadership is from the top down. I have never believed that. I have always believed that leadership is from the front forward. And knowing that leadership is from the front forward is knowing the responsibilities that you carry with it, and the fact that life will not always be pleasant. When somebody comes along to me that has had my life experiences and have come through them with the idea that they will continue to fight for Ireland and Ireland only, no matter what is said about them, or no matter how they are defamed, or no matter how they are supposedly disgraced before the general public and population, then we can discuss whether perhaps they might be best placed to take my place. If you tell the truth in the modern world about anything, you can expect at least the roof to cave in, verbally, if not physically. And if it matters that much to you, well, don't set out on the road of truth-telling at all. Because you're simply wasting your time and you're wasting everybody else's. Because you will abandon your post at some point. But I would say this, because that sounds a bit negative. And my experience in the first 2 years of leading this party has been positive in most senses. It's important also to remember who it is that are calling you these names. I'll give you an example, just one example, because I'd be here all day if I was to tell you about the number of people who have given me talks of use. But I'll give you one example. He is a Councillor Matt Wayne of the Google Image Party. He called me filth during the week. He didn't bother to elaborate as to what kind of filth. Just filth. Now, most of you probably don't remember Matt Wayne. He's a councillor from Mullahuddart who made himself briefly famous, I suppose, his 15 minutes, by saying that the flag of the Irish Republic should not be flown outside the council buildings in the Irish Republic for fear that it would be offensive to foreign nationals. He said this: I come from the tradition of the workers' movement, but this workers' movement that he comes from the tradition of doesn't see the country of your birth as being anything significant. I take great pride in being called filth by such a man. He wants the red flag of Marxist socialism flown there instead. To the 100 million or more fatal victims of slaughter Bolshevism, that might seem like an idea that's filth. And to those decent foreign nationals who live amongst us, like the Poles, Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians, Romanians, Lithuanians, Estonians, Latvians, etc. I wonder which flag they find more offensive. I wonder which flag they find more offensive, the one that stood on their heads for 40 years, or the flag of the Irish Republic. So while I say on the one hand, brace for yourself for an unpleasant explosion of vitriol when you speak honestly about mass immigration, be proud to know the colour of a person from whom the abuse will come. When the shouts are coming from the sewer, and they are, hold your head up straight, walk forward and know that the flag of the Irish Republic and the grave of a dead Fenian is never so far away that you would wish to disgrace either by giving an inch of compromise to people who have never known a clean, pure thought. On various occasions where I have mentioned the issue of mass immigration, I am accused by the furthest reaches of the left, apart from being filth, of the blood crime of being Norman. That's as a result of my last name. Now, these people obviously don't understand how names transfer down the patriarchal line, and if you explained it to them, that would only drive them to consider you a misogynist. But the fact of the matter is there never were very many actual Normans that came to Ireland. But that's neither here nor there. That is my blood crime. Some thousand years ago or something, some ancestor of mine passed on to me the name Barrett, which, as you know, is a Norman name. This is very illustrating, though, in some ways, because I go back to the Rose of Tralee. She said during the week that her Zambian heritage was as important to her as her Irish heritage. And it got me to thinking, how does a girl born in Kilkenny, winning as the Waterford Rose, figure the importance of her Zambian heritage so highly? I know nothing at all worth mentioning about my Norman heritage, except that they invaded England in 1066, so they can't have been all bad. and they came here sometime after that, so they can't be all that good either, like most people. But I do remember a phrase from my primary school days, that the Normans of the medieval period had become more Irish than the Irish themselves. In fact, we find Lionel, the Duke of Clarence, complaining in the Edicts of Kilkenny in 1366 that the Normans that had settled here had no longer any loyalty to the English king, and that they, I'm quoting exactly, forsaking the English language, manners, mode of riding, laws and usages, live and govern themselves according to the manners and fashion and language of our Irish enemies. Lionel lasted another year in Ireland. We drove him out in 1367. It doesn't sound to me like my Norman heritage is important to me as my Irish heritage. You'll also occasionally hear somebody say there's no such thing as Irish. And that's part of the Norman argument, but sometimes they update it a little and say, well, I'm not Irish because there's no such thing as Irish, and there's no such thing as Irish because I'm a mix of Scottish, Welsh, French and German. Well, how can you be a mix of Scottish, Welsh, French and German then, unless there's something called Scottish and Welsh and French and German? You see, they're hoist upon their own petard. They are the believers in the nothingness. In fact, for the liberal, there's no such thing as anything. And when you get right down to the core of it, what they mean by diversity is at the heart of the liberal theology, and it is a religion. It is a religion based on a faith, and it is based on a faith that does not require any explanation. If I sit the liberal down, if he were willing to do so, is they sometimes throw out the Norman thing, and then they throw out the Tuatha Dé Danann, and they throw out the Firbolgs before them, who didn't fare very well from diversity, as I recall. But in any case, all in the name of there's no such thing as Irish. And if you spend long enough proving to them that there is such a thing as Irish, when they have finally accepted that there is nowhere else to run, that they are in fact in a corner, they will, as I said at the beginning, scream, "You're a Nazi, you're literally Hitler, and I will no longer tolerate any discussion with the intolerant." None of this drivel would have an ounce of political traction if it were not subordinated to the aim and purpose of international finance capital. Because the morons that we normally debate against on RT or any other program, or for that matter, as I say, online, they are not capable of destroying nations. Finance capital is. It is the destroyer of nations. It is the atomizer of people. It is the idea of reducing the human being to production and consumption units. And that's why they need the nation to be gone. And that's why it is important that there be no such thing as Irish or Scottish or French or German. We had Peter Sutherland say it. We have George Soros saying it. We have the EU saying it. We have the UN saying it. The whole cabal of the left as well. The stupid left and the collaborative left intent on reducing to malleable units all things in the service of capital and consequently economic efficiency. And be damned then whether that leaves you poor or homeless or dead in the pursuit of profit. But the words are compassion, and the words are welcome, and sometimes, like last night, Colm O'Gorman projects the word love onto the GPO. How dare he? The point of all of this, of course, is not diversity. They don't want diversity. That's of no use to international finance capital. There's no profit in diversity. There is profit in the amorphous grey mass of pointless existence, where the only thing that people have is what they work for. Money. If they have any values higher than that, bigger than that, more important than that, they become dangerous in and of themselves. If they collectively have an identity that is bigger than the pursuit of money or a wage packet at the end of the week, they become especially dangerous because they might actually take back into their own hands the control of their own destiny. And they might actually decide to live their lives for themselves and their families the way they decide, not in the way capital decides. But the National Party is about the national idea, and it is exactly that. And that is why it is the collective that is dangerous. And that is why there is so much money poured into the other side of this so-called debate, which would not be a debate at all if it weren't for all the money on the other side. So simple, plain and obvious is it a fact that you cannot mix everybody in the world together and end with diversity. What you end with is sameness and blandness. The national idea says the Irish people have the right to exist, and that is a declaration of war. How that war will be fought, politically and otherwise, will be decided in the coming years. Principle number 7 of the National Party says, the National Party opposes unrestricted immigration, placing above all the preservation of national identity and culture as the bedrock of a principled patriotism. We are not opposed to all immigration. The Normans are fine. They can stay. As can the potatoes. You did see the attack on the anti-immigration attack that the Irish Times launched on the poor old potato during the week. The spuds too can stay. We're not opposed to all immigration, but we are opposed to unrestricted immigration and mass immigration in the form that we have had it. Because, and I don't, somebody else put it more eloquently than I ever could, we do not lock our doors at night because we hate the people outside. We lock our doors because we love the people inside. And in national terms, that means our families, our communities, and Ireland. Ireland always and Ireland only. And anyone who tells you they believe something else is either a fool or is trying to fool you. There are on the economic neoliberal right, as I say, and the pathological left, the haters who denounce hate, the intolerant who demand tolerance. They hate Ireland. They always have, they always will. They are the anti-Ireland, which must be fought with greater vigour and more determination than any illegal immigration as such, because they are the source of it. They are the source of the political will behind it. They are not the non-nationals. They are the anti-nationals. So what would a national government do on immigration by itself, unconnected with other reconstructions which, strictly speaking, are necessary? It's never possible to disconnect in joined up thinking everything. But we can make several direct, simple statements. We would introduce an Australian-style point system whereby limited immigration would be accepted on the basis of Ireland's interests only. We would fix a number, no more than 2,000, for permanent immigration to this country per year from anywhere in the world, and reserve the right to reduce that figure if it were constant, because 20,000 a year, 20,000 every 10 years is too much. We would give first option among those immigrants to those persons of provable Irish heritage, the diaspora. We would prioritise persons that are quicker and easier to assimilate. And yes, that means Europeans. We would exclude immediately all persons espousing the ideology of Islam until we have a clear notion of the terrorist threat that is almost certainly already among us. We shall not become another Sweden. And yes, that is a Muslim ban. We would exclude all persons with an indictable criminal record and deport all foreigners who commit indictable crimes while in Ireland immediately after serving their sentence. We would end the exploitative asylum process, withdraw from all so-called international obligations and to accept and process obviously fraudulent claims. And asylum, where granted and rarely granted, will not be a ticket to permanent residence. We will shred the citizenship papers thrown around like confetti at a bad wedding in recent years, in particular by the Minister Alan Shatter, and to hell with anyone who says we can't. This country is ours. It is our place in the world. It's our only home. It shall remain so. We were given it as an inheritance from our forefathers who purchased it at great expense of blood and suffering. And we hold it in trust only for our children and their children. It is not for us to give away. It belongs to them now and forever. We give notice on the issue of mass immigration and the issue of diversity, multiculturalism and so on and so forth, as the National Party gives notice to the whole world on so many issues relating to the survival of the Irish nation. That the Irish people intend to stand up and that the foot of tyranny does not fit upon the neck of an upright man. Or yes or aye.